tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
We actually stand with the Indigenous.
We decided we're going to have family time regardless of where it was.
A very different Canada Day. The country marks its birthday with pandemic distancing and protest. Also,
the purpose of law is to change Hong Kong from rule of law to rule of fear.
protests in Hong Kong and in Vancouver as China's new national security law is passed. And
everyone's just scared right now.
Not so sweet season. BC farmers struggle to find enough fruit pickers amid COVID-19.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Leanne and Mike are away tonight. It is a Canada Day unlike any other. The COVID-19 pandemic has forced all but a few celebrations online, and wet weather outside has forced more people inside. But neither could dampen the spirits of people eager to celebrate the birth of this country. Yes, the PNE hosted a reverse parade today where attendees were the ones behind the wheel. They drove their own cars along a path dotted with performances and displays highlighting parts of Canadian culture, hockey, timber sports, and getting into the great outdoors among them. Well, the rain didn't keep people off our beaches either.
We decided we're going to have family time regardless of where it was, so that's why we got the tent and stuff, and it's still beautiful even though it's a little wet out.
We moved to downtown just under a year ago, so we were planning to do all the downtown celebrations, and of course they're all now cancelled, but it doesn't stop us from getting out, and it just is what it is. You know, we do things virtually, it doesn't stop us from getting out and obviously enjoying everything Canada has to offer.
And if you were feeling like you missed out on any celebrations, there's still plenty of time to join in online. This is a live look at Surrey's virtual Canada Day festivities. They kicked off with just a few moments ago with performances coming up by 5440 and Biff Naked and Indigenous artists like David Whitebean, Francis James, and James Jones. There are also live online events out of Abbotsford, Maple Ridge, Coquitlam, Richmond, and more.
I would just like to welcome you.
Now, many Canadians may be disappointed that pandemic restrictions have shut down most Canada Day celebrations. But with anti-racism protests shining a light on systemic discrimination across this country, many others do not want to celebrate at all. As Eva Uguen-Senge reports, some Vancouverites are taking a more critical look at Canada's legacy.
Cancel Canada Day was the message in downtown Vancouver today. Hundreds gathered at the Vancouver Art Gallery to call out what they see as an ongoing genocide in Canada. Protesters wanted to honor the Indigenous lives lost throughout Canada's history.
I can't in good conscience celebrate Canada Day when I know that there's an ongoing genocide of Indigenous people. There's systemic discrimination against them.
It is the natural right of Indigenous people to be on our own sovereign territory and exert our sovereignty and our title in our own territories.
The Prime Minister also acknowledged that Canada has work to do.
There are some real problems that we still have to work on, and one of them is systemic discrimination, continued marginalization of Indigenous peoples, of racialized Canadians. And that doesn't prevent us from saying that, wow, we're a great country, but it does highlight that we need to be even better. We need to do more to make sure that everyone feels the benefits of this country.
Across town, a Culture Day event was held in opposition to Canada Day at Vancouver's Trout Lake.
We just couldn't stand anymore to commemorate a day that really sensationalizes and glorifies colonialism and genocide.
Organizers wanted to celebrate Black and Indigenous artists often ignored by the arts industry.
There's been discrepancies where these very creatives haven't been paid for gigs or they don't get bookings. So that's the issue. The way people are engaging with the culture and the art is inappropriate.
The organizers of Culture Day say there are a lot of ways Canadians can do better.
Fight racism, call out racism, fight for the people that are highly affected by it. See equal distribution of wealth, school system. Let them teach your kids about Black history, about Native history.
They hope to turn Culture Day into an annual event to hear from Black and Indigenous artists, a kind of counter Canada Day. Eva Uguen-Senge, CBC News, Vancouver.
A driver and two passengers are in jail tonight after a car crashed into a downtown store early this morning. An SUV crashed into the Fresh Street Market on Pacific Street near Howe just after 3:30. Neighbors said it was so loud it woke them up. The crash caused major damage to the truck and prompted a large emergency response. No injuries have been reported.
About 10 minutes after the accident, the bakers for Fresh Street arrived, so timing was good for them. But there was no pedestrians on the sidewalk that were affected.
That investigation is still going on. Victoria police are looking into a potential hate crime after a black man was attacked while on board a BC Transit bus. Investigators say video shows a white man getting on board, moving towards a seat, then standing up and hitting the other man without any warning. They say a few other passengers then stepped in and pushed the suspect off the bus. That's his photo there. He's 40 to 50 years old with blonde hair and a medium to heavy build. If anyone has information about him, they're asked to call the numbers on your screen there. The province reported no new COVID-19 deaths yesterday, the fourth day in a row. However, Providence Health says 2 residents at Holy Family Hospital in Vancouver did die from coronavirus over the weekend. Those deaths have not yet been included in the provincial total. Providence says there is often a lag in collecting the data. 5 residents at Holy Family have died from COVID-19 since the start of the pandemic. Healthcare workers at Surrey Memorial Hospital received some royal praise for their efforts on the front lines during this pandemic.
Catherine, I just wanted to just touch base and say how proud we are of all of you, everyone on the front line who have led the way very stoically, very bravely, and have put patient care, right at the top of the list, and have done a fantastic job. So well done to all of you, and I hope Catherine and I can come and visit you guys one day and say that to you in person.
6 hospital workers heard directly from the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. Prince William says healthcare workers have been doing a fantastic job. Kate and William took part in the video call with the staff to mark Canada Day. The Canadian government warns that traveling to Hong Kong now puts you at risk of arbitrary detention, even extradition to China. It's because of that new national security law meant to shut down calls for independence. Megan Batchelor shows us the first arrests and the reaction here in Metro Vancouver.
Amid tear gas and turmoil, hundreds of arrests in Hong Kong. 10 of them were under a harsh new law. It was brought in Wednesday with much pomp and ceremony, banning activities deemed to be subversive or promoting independence. Just holding up this banner got 1 man arrested.
The law will radicalize some people. It will empower the Hong Kong police. There will be more clashes, and that's deeply worrisome.
Carrie Lam, Hong Kong's chief executive, stood by the law, saying it will help defend the stability and prosperity of the people. There's been civil unrest here for more than a year.
I think very obviously the purpose of law is to change Hong Kong from rule of law to rule of fear.
A rule of fear that's meant to reach overseas. Protesters here in Vancouver not only concerned for those in Hong Kong, but for themselves. Even in Canada, anyone found breaching this new law could face arrest in China or Hong Kong. Protesters in Canada just as defiant as those in Hong Kong in spite of that risk.
No, I'm not nervous. I will go back to Hong Kong for visit. No.
Canada joined 26 countries condemning the law through the UN Human Rights Council. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson went much further. He invited 3 million Hong Kong residents who have a certain British travel designation to live and work in his country right now on a path to permanent citizenship, an extraordinary measure in a desperate time. Megan Batchelor, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, look who is back in studio. Brett Soderholm, great to see you, friend. We're so glad you're back. And we're heading into some rather concerning weather. Take it away.
Yeah, as we were mentioning yesterday, the concern right now across BC is really just for the impressive amount of rain that we're going to be getting in northeastern portions of the province. And I want to start off tonight's weather forecast by looking at this specifically. Environment Canada has issued a rainfall warning for the areas indicated in green here from Fort Nelson down to Dawson Creek, because there's the potential for 40 to 80 millimeters of rain to accumulate. And farther south, as we go from Prince George down to Williams Lake and Kamloops, special weather statements are in effect because 20 to 40 millimeters of rain or more could be accumulating in that time. And of course, flood warnings issued by the BC River Forecast Centre remain in effect as well. And here's a look right now at our radar imagery. What you're going to notice, things are moving from the east to the west. This is a little bit unusual. Normally we think of rain coming from the west to the east, but this is indicative of a very strong system. And it's this area of low pressure. Around the area of low pressure, it rotates counterclockwise. And that's why all of BC, not only today, but for the next 48 hours really, will be under the influence of this low. And if you watch, especially over here for Vancouver Island and parts of the south coast, we're going to get some wraparound rain from this that's going to be headed our way by Friday afternoon. So we're not out of the woods just yet. If we look at the live radar right now, just outside of our studio, in fact, in Vancouver, I can tell it's a little bit drizzly, but we are going to be drying up over the next little bit, and Vancouver Island has been relatively dry throughout the day. But the one thing you probably noticed today, temperatures. Look at this. These are the high temperatures that we got up to today. Vancouver, only 15 degrees. Abbotsford, only 13. This is what you would expect for March, not for July 1st or on Canada Day. And Vancouver Island not really doing too much better, except for Victoria and Nanaimo getting closer to that 20-degree mark. As we look ahead for the next few hours, you're going to see mostly a cloudy story for this evening, but by the early hours, in the pre-dawn hours and into tomorrow, there is still going to be that risk for a few showers. But tomorrow, I'm optimistic we might even get a few sunny breaks if we're lucky. Temperatures as well are going to be moderating across the interior. It's been quite chilly in places like Kelowna and Kamloops, but we're going to see these rise back up into the low 20s, where we're going to still be right around that 18-degree mark for the next foreseeable future. And to end off the work week, we're going to be into those upper teens. Now, for a 5-day forecast, I'm pretty happy to tell you that we are going to get these unsettled conditions out of our way for Thursday and Friday. And look at this, Saturday and Sunday, sunshine on both days and temperatures in the 20s. I can't even tell you the last time that happened. So hopefully you can get outside and enjoy a bit of that sunshine.
And just imagine today we had friends and colleagues saying that they had to turn on the furnace and spark up a fire in their fireplaces.
Exactly. Oh.
Well done. Thanks, Brett. Well, some of BC's produce growers are struggling to find enough people to pick the fruits of their labor, literally. The pandemic is a big factor in their problems. And as Tina Lovegreen learned, farmers are having to get creative to find workarounds.
In BC's Okanagan, the skies have cleared up just in time to get some work done.
After a rain, it's so hard. So you're trying to go fast, but you don't want to fall.
But the harvest season is off to a rough start.
Every time it rains and the sun comes out, the cherries split. You know, that's all it takes. That's how fragile the fruit is.
And on top of that, they're struggling to find the thousands of people they need to pick the fruit before it spoils.
Usually at this point, I would have had 80, 90 people phone asking, when's cherry picking starting. I've had, I think, 4 people call. And I think some of it's just the travel across the country. Some is people are scared. Everyone's just scared right now.
Scared because of COVID-19, or unable to get here because of border closures, meaning fewer workers from places like Mexico. Traditionally, 1,500 young people from Quebec make the journey to BC, but not this year.
Every day there's people showing up and asking for workers, which is not something that happens every year. And I get offered 3 different jobs every day.
It's a really bad season with the COVID and everything, so it's really hard for everybody, like the farmers and us.
There are new safety protocols inside processing plants, and when workers are in the field, it's easy to stay apart. The worry comes when they're done for the day. For many workers, finding clean and safe accommodation can be a challenge at the best of times, but it's even more of a concern now with COVID-19. Several communities are considering campgrounds to keep people safe, like this one, where physical distancing and other measures can be enforced. There have been worries about people driving from Quebec, where COVID rates are much higher.
We welcome them, but we want them to be respectful of the communities that they're working in and our citizens, and I have found that they are.
After all, these workers are deemed an essential service, and they need them to come back next year. Tina Lovegreen, CBC News, Oliver, BC.
And if you were craving some fun during this pandemic summer, you will be able to see the horses race at Hastings Park, but you'll have to do it online. The track says it will host a shortened 25 race day season starting on Monday, but no fans will be allowed at the track because of COVID-19. You will be able to watch and bet online if you like. Industry leaders say their safety plan has been approved by the province, and horse owners have been able to pay the various staff who work at the track. There are hundreds, but money from betting and winning purses is going to be much lower than normal. Well, on a Canada Day that has been anything but normal, the anthem is still a fixture in its 40th official anniversary year, but it too is being delivered differently. The Surrey City Orchestra played a rendition of O Canada, a distant one, with a special appearance by Surrey Centre MP Randeep Sarai. We'll have more on today's celebrations from coast to coast right after this. Thanks for tuning in to our ad-free live stream tonight. To celebrate Canada's birthday, one Mississauga man decided to pay tribute to the country in a very special way. He made a series of 3D homemade booklets using cardboard to celebrate all of our provinces and territories, the 13 of them. The project is called Beautiful Canada. CBC News spoke with him to talk about what he calls his, quote, love letter to this amazing country.
I wanted to make things that other people could look at and say, you know what, I can make that too. So welcome to my home, the world of cardboard. So some of my cardboard posters I made on Black history and some Canadian artist artwork. These are my modular board game pieces for when my daughter and I feel like converting the house into a giant board game. And this is the kind of stuff I show on YouTube, my cardboard poster art.
Hello everyone, my name is Ahomi Game. I love making insane, crazy things out of cardboard.
You know, I've been hardcore into making things out of cardboard since I was a teenager. 2008, I discovered YouTube and just started doing tutorial videos and just made bigger and crazier things, like a cardboard swimming pool and standees the size of my house.
Happy 2014 YouTube, winter is coming.
So it just became a fun passion for me. It's purely a hobby. I just do it for fun, but I like working with my hands. All right, so I'm gonna show you how I make one of my Beautiful Canada 3D art pieces. Let me just take my battle axe. Well, during this pandemic that all of us have had to go through, it gave me a lot of time to think about the country that I was born in and has lived in all 43 years of my life. I've been all over the US, Mexico, the Caribbean, but I realized I've only been, of course, in Ontario and in Quebec. And I started researching and realizing that every province and territory has beautiful landscapes. They're all unique. And I wanted to create like a love letter to Canada by showing just what each region has and why, when this all blows over, hopefully, that Canadians should, instead of looking south and looking Europe and Asia, let's explore Canada. Let's see our own country. I plan how many layers I want, usually 5 layers. I intricately cut out each one and then glue it to one layer, let that glue dry, then glue on the next layer, let that dry until all 5 are done. And then I attach the cover onto it and then score it so it folds into a booklet. Each one would take about 2 to 3 hours to complete, not including the gluing time. I want everyone to have something that's unique and that they could look at and say, you know what, this reminds me of why I love Canada. This is what reminds me of why I love my province, my territory, and why this entire country is the greatest country to live in.
That is amazing. Stay with us. We're going to have the latest headlines from across this country in just a few moments. In many parts of this country, it is a Canada Day unlike any other. Even a time-honored July 1st tradition has had to change, the citizenship ceremony. But as David Thurton tells us, for those who took part, it was just as exciting as ever.
Happy Canada Day, everyone! Happy Canada Day, everyone!
It's probably not how these 19 new Canadians thought they would officially become citizens, but COVID-19 and physical distancing requirements mean the traditional citizenship ceremony had to go online. But the essentials remain the same. The judge.
Canadian citizenship also comes with responsibilities, such as obeying the law.
And that reminder of the responsibilities that come with being Canadian.
I swear.
And then the oath, although it might have been a bit hard for these 19 new Canadians to follow along.
And bear true allegiance.
And bear true allegiance.
But the emotions and pride were the same for some who took part.
I was hoping for a ceremony in person, but actually Zoom ceremony was very well organized, and the emotional level of the ceremony was very high.
Michael Janus moved to Canada about a decade ago, and he now lives in Whitehorse. Born in Poland, Janus fell in love with the natural northern beauty of his new home, although he knows the country does have its problems with systemic racism.
I'm very proud to become Canadian because despite of the issues which Canada faced in the past, Kenyans do not avoid responsibility and they do not avoid to talk about it.
Did you know there are over 250 ethnicities living in communities across Canada?
The Minister of Immigration attended today's ceremony, and he acknowledged that Canada is a work in progress.
I would say that yes, racism does exist in all of its forms in Canada, and we have to acknowledge it. We have to come to grips with that harsh truth.
We stand on God.
It's an imperfect country, and today was an imperfect ceremony, Mendocino says. But as with all things, there's opportunities to make it better. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
COVID-19 meant Canadians could not gather in the thousands on Parliament Hill in Ottawa today, or here in BC, or anywhere else. But people did celebrate, and as Carolyn Dunn shows us, many did so responsibly, others less so.
Residents of a Calgary seniors' home rang in Canada Day on their feet. More than 50 of them, average age 91, started a walking club at the beginning of the pandemic. The group has logged more than 10 million steps.
It's super exciting. It's beyond our imagination. We could never, ever have dreamt that we would walk this far.
Fitting on Canada Day, they've walked the equivalent of a stroll to Ottawa. In the capital, there was plenty of spirit, if not the usual crush of people. That's where the Chowdhury family was marking their first Canada Day as citizens. A special day, even if COVID has them keeping their distance.
It's pretty surreal, but it's good. People are trying to be safe, which is also important. And we are trying to be safe, which is why we are here and not close to the hill.
Not far away, anti-government protesters used the day to voice their opposition to, among other things, the COVID lockdown measures.
We're celebrating our nation while we still can. We're here to talk about freedom. We want to have our freedoms restored.
In Toronto, the weather cooperated for beachgoers who, from the air, seemed to be creating social distancing bubbles. The view of compliance from the ground was up for debate.
I'm looking around and I'm seeing a pretty good accounting of that, yes.
I don't believe so.
You don't believe so?
No. I see groups, 10 or more, and they're here and there all over the place.
For those not willing to risk the crowds, there were plenty of virtual events, like hip-hop dancing at Toronto's harbourfront and Bhangra dancing in Yukon, an unprecedented Canada Day. But it turns out, if there's a will to celebrate the maple leaf, even in a pandemic, there's a way. Even if this year, it's from your car. Carolyn Dunn, CBC News, Calgary.
Is Canada's game coming home? Why the NHL may be going all Canadian after the break. Our
Howard Hughes' idea of a big time in Vancouver apparently is to stay holed up in that 20th floor hotel suite of his back there in the Bayshore. And the idea of every news agency in the world is to keep guys like me hanging around outside watching that particular non-event. Well, I'm prepared to go along with that for, let's say, the next 24 hours, and we'll see if we can find the elusive Mr. Hughes. Hughes did land at the Vancouver airport, and a man identified as Hughes did pass through customs and immigration. That much is known. A Hughes plane landed at a remote part of the airport, and in fact, aviation may be one reason for the visit. Dominion Aircraft of Vancouver has designed a short-field machine for which they cannot get federal financial backing, and there are rumors that Howard Hughes may be willing to pay the $3.5 million tag. Be that as it may, Howard Hughes is not talking as if anyone ever expected he would. The mysterious billionaire is taking his ease on the top floor of the Bayshore, watching movies, we're told, and presumably doing whatever else a whole lot of money can buy. Like the old song says, nice work if you can get it. Mr. Hughes has a nice view if he ever bothers to take it in. The curtains atop the Bayshore remain shut with the odd exception, and reporters are seizing on anything that comes along. Last night, for example, a man thought to be Hughes left the hotel. His office says that wasn't so. And so we're reduced to nattering helplessly, for example, about what a billionaire recluse likes to eat.
Guidelines have loosely been laid out that the items will probably be quite plain, but they want them well prepared and of the first quality. Yesterday I had some boneless chicken breast, boneless and skinless, and they were to be prepared in a poêle fashion, which is sort of like a poaching but not covered with liquid.
Security measures at the hotel have been beefed up somewhat to the discomfort of some regular guests, but Mission Impossible lives on with hourly changes in cast.
Hi, we're not allowed off, right?
Well, that seems to me to be the proper attitude to take toward this whole caper. If I were to be serious about it, I think I might very well wind up in a home. I have not seen Howard Hughes in the past 24 hours, and as a matter of fact, I haven't seen anybody else who's seen him either. So I'm forced into a sort of direct appeal, if you like. Mr. Hughes, if you're in there, and if you're watching television and you'd like to be interviewed, come on out, and we'll accommodate you. I think maybe we're going to be here for quite a while. Mike McCourt, CBC News, Vancouver.
Canada Day may come this year with mixed feelings and complicated politics. It also comes with some great news for hockey fans. Today we learned Edmonton and Toronto are all but sure to host the remaining NHL games, and soon. Our Devin Haru explains why Canada looks like the big winner.
At long last, it appears the saga is over. Reports today Edmonton and Toronto are the chosen ones.
Let's go!
Some fans are thrilled, others are skeptical.
Is it worth the risk? That's the million-dollar question right there.
This moment is not the best time to do it, so we have to wait, you know?
I think that it's going to be kind of like having the Olympics or something like that, where all the games are here, so the hype is going to be here.
There's no better sport to watch as far as being Canadian watching hockey.
Fires a shot, score!
Up until a few weeks ago, Las Vegas was a front-runner, but a spike in COVID cases in the U.S. changed the game in a hurry.
They would likely be leaning towards areas that have the epidemic under tighter control.
Now McDavid across the drive,
NHL players will be under strict quarantine, bubbles in both cities,
back, McDavid shot,
restricting movement, which for the two final teams could last for months.
I also think that the risk to the local community is negligible.
The NHL Players Association still has to sign off on these plans, and some players have already voiced concerns, but health officials and politicians in both cities are ready to move forward.
And where else would it be more appropriate, beyond whatever other city they choose, to have one of the hubs than here?
But what is the actual payoff?
The city will be on display, and I think it'll give an opportunity for images of the city to be broadcast.
The prize? Hundreds of NHL players and team officials infiltrating 2 Canadian cities.
Toronto won out and Edmonton won out because they were deemed to be safer, healthier spaces than other cities in competition.
Nearly 5 months after the last puck drop, Hockey Night in Canada looks set to return. Devin Haru, CBC News, Toronto.
You can always find our news program online at cbc.ca/BC. Our 11 o'clock late news is taking a break tonight. Your next local news is on the early edition on CBC Radio 1. That begins tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. Good night. Happy Canada Day.